Finding the perfect duty gun has always been a topic of discussion in the gun world. But is there something to be said about the growing popularity of 2011s? For years, gun reviewers and those in the professional space have always talked about how a 2011 still doesn't match up to your standard polymer gun when it comes to durability. But over the last year, I've had a growing interest in 2011s, and I started doing some deep diving into what the platform has to offer. For those new to the channel, I primarily shoot striker fire handguns, and this ultimately steered me towards my current EDC and competition gun. But as many of us can relate, when something new and shiny comes to the market, we get curious. So in this video, I want to look at what the modern 2011 brings to the table and if this platform will be the future of what we consider a duty gun. Real quick, I'd like to say a thank you to our channel sponsor, Obsidian Tactics. Obsidian Tactics is an online retailer that offers a curated selection of high quality and high value products vetted throughout the two-way community. They even sell products from some of your favorite well-known brands. So visit Obsidian Tactics for all your two-way needs and wants. All right, back to the video. Originating from the 1911, 2011 handguns incorporate significant upgrades. With the addition of double-stack magazines, these handguns keep the iconic ergonomics and performance standards as its predecessor, which has helped aid it in becoming a growing trend over the last 5 years. Now, when you start to compare the 2011 style handguns to other popular modern duty guns like the Glock 17, SIG P320, Smith & Wesson M&P, we start to see a few key differences emerge. 2011s are generally heavier due to their steel or aluminum components, even though they still utilize polymer to an extent. This separates it from the duty guns previously mentioned that strictly use polymer frames. But with the growth and popularity, the 2011 line has begun to offer other variations out there that make it easier to carry as an EDC. So, what are some of the key things we tend to look for in a duty gun? For me, there are 4: performance, modularity, reliability, and ease of maintenance. How well will this gun perform? Is the platform modular and capable enough to adapt to the shooter's role or intent? How reliable is it? And finally, ease of maintenance. How easy is it to maintain this item in the field? These are all important things to consider when talking about this topic. And for me, this sparked an internal question that I think may be answered sooner than we think. Will 2011s be the future of duty guns? If you had asked me that question 12 months ago, my answer would have been absolutely not. And part of this was due to my own biases and partial ignorance. I made the mistake of not doing my own research and only taking the opinions of people that shared the same bias as me. The common notion was that 2011s are too high maintenance, have too much of a tight tolerance, and the most common one, they aren't drop safe. And this mindset stuck with me for a very long time. But like I mentioned earlier in the video, last year got me pretty curious about what the platform has to offer. And I decided to do my own research and to put the 2011 platform to somewhat of a mild test. And by test, I mean, I treated the gun exactly the same way I would treat my other striker fire handguns. Now, I do want to disclose that I use a Springfield Prodigy comp to come to the conclusions brought to you in this video. And by no means is the Prodigy a fair representation of the entire 2011 market. But I did do some research on the back end so I can give you guys my honest thoughts on the good and the bad I experienced with this style of handgun. I want to start with some of the gripes I have with the 2011 design. First off, I never really liked external safeties. I've always felt like they slowed down the draw to first shot process. I do understand the level of comfort it gives people knowing that the gun is pretty much rendered unusable when the safety is engaged. But that's something I've never been a fan of. And if I'm being fair, I can't ding the 2011 for having them, especially because of how light their triggers are. But through the shooting, I continue to have issues with forgetting that the safety is on and trying to pull the trigger or trying to rack the slide back only to be met with a standoff. This is obviously a training issue. So again, I'm not gonna bash the platform for that. My next gripe is how sensitive the gun can be. In general, 2011s need a little bit more thought when operating them. When reloading with my personal striker fire handgun, I typically slam the mag into place to guarantee it's seated properly. But 2011s have exposed ejectors, and doing this could damage the ejector altogether. Simple things like closing your slide on an empty chamber is also something you're gonna wanna avoid on this platform. Can the same be said with regular handguns? Maybe. But I occasionally drop my slide on an empty chamber, and I've yet to come across any issues. Another thing is field stripping a 2011 is something you really gotta learn. My first time breaking down this pistol to clean it took about 5 minutes to learn. Though that's not inherently a long time, there are a lot of intricate steps you have to take in order to do it properly. And if you aren't careful, you can lose pieces of your gun if you're field stripping in a hurry. That being said, having to use external tools to break down a pistol is something that I'm not a fan of. But with that in mind, having the proper tools on you at all times is something you'll have to consider. These couple of things could be deemed strict negatives for the average shooter, but we have to remember that every firearm has its pros and cons, and to my surprise, I actually found more pros than cons on this platform. The first thing I do want to address is that I think the maintenance schedule for these guns is drastically over-exaggerated online. This could be a bias due to how I maintain my personal firearms, but I found that this gun can run a significant amount of rounds before you start to see it struggle. A typical range day for me can vary between 300 to 600 rounds. And afterwards, I'll typically re-oil my gun just so I can make sure it'll be ready for the next time I use it. So going into this range session, I was expecting to see some struggle or malfunctions towards the end. I've always been told after a couple hundred rounds that 2011s need to be re-oiled to keep it running. But to my surprise, that wasn't the case. Prior to coming to the range, I cleaned it and oiled it the way I'd oil any of my other regular polymer guns. And through a 500 round range day, running it completely dry, I came across zero issues. Now keep in mind, this is not a gun review. I just wanted to test out this platform for myself. And I know that 500 rounds is not adequate enough to determine if it's super durable. But going back to the range session, I was actually shooting at below freezing temperatures. We've had a pretty gnarly cold front hit Georgia, and I thought this would be a great time to see how this gun runs in below optimal temperatures. Now, the argument could be made that if I were to keep shooting up to 1,000 or 1,500 round count, that I would come across more malfunctions. And I wouldn't be surprised if I did, but I rarely get to that round count without re-oiling my guns at least 2 to 3 times. That's just how I maintain my guns. So if you're oiling this gun at the same rate you would oil your polymer guns, then you probably shouldn't run into any issues. When looking at the modularity of the gun, you see pretty much the same offerings you'll get from any other modern duty rated gun. You've got a light rail for hosting various lighting options. You've got an optic mounting system that allows you to equip your preferred or favorite duty rated optic, and you have options to add or remove mag wells. Like I said in previous videos, in 2025, I believe these things are a requirement to have on every pistol being manufactured in today's climate. The ability to add these accessories needs to be available if you want to contend in the duty market. Next, I want to talk about the performance of this pistol. I know this is a special case scenario, but with the weight, comp, and trigger design, the shooting experience was something to be admired. I think I had my eyes open on how delightful the shooting experience can be with the right platform. I still believe in shooting non-ported or comp guns for training, but for practicality, you gain a huge advantage with a 2011 platform. The recoil impulse was so soft and the return to zero was so predictable that it almost left me speechless. This is probably due to the fact that these double stack guns use bull barrels. These barrels are a thicker profile with no bushing, providing a tight lockup directly into the slide. The advantages of this are improved rigidity that reduces barrel flex during firing, enhancing accuracy, and the heavier weight improves recoil management and reduces muzzle rise. I'm not one to sit here and advocate for having the flattest shooting gun, because regardless of muzzle flip, if you're gripping the gun properly, it will always behave in a predictable manner, which will give you the ability to shoot much faster. But when looking back at the footage, I realized how flat the slide was tracking during some of my drills. And even before I saw the footage, I was able to see this visually through the optic. It was as if the dot was glued to the glass. It barely moved if I was doing everything right on my end. And that's something to be said. I know I kind of touched on how soft the recoil impulse was, but I really want to explain what I mean by that. Ideally, you want the reciprocating force of the slide coming back to hit in line with the palm of your hand. But with the way that guns are designed, that's almost impossible. The grip sits below the slide, hence why most instructors advocate for gripping as high as possible on the gun. But something about how this grip is angled and possibly the weight of the gun made it feel like the reciprocating force was actually hitting the palm of my hand. It felt as if it was going straight back into my palm as opposed to the top of my hand. Now, one drawback of this is that I did see myself starting to get lazy with my grip because of how easy it was to shoot. But once I started noticing that and then reconstructing my grip properly, the gun only got softer and flatter. When talking about performance, I can honestly say that this platform exceeds my expectations and will not hold you back from performing at your highest level. With all that being said, would I consider the 2011 good enough to be rated as a duty firearm? There are many things that still need to be addressed with this platform, and some of them are already being addressed. One of them being is that these guns are not drop safe. But Staccato just announced a drop safe 2011 variant that they are aiming to push into the duty market, and it's coming in at somewhat of a reasonable price. And when I see things like that coming up, I can't help to think that we might be steering into a new direction. And with companies like Staccato and Bull Armory constantly trying to innovate and improve the platform, it makes me wonder how long it'll take for 2011s to be the new standard. Am I saying that this is guaranteed to happen? No, not necessarily, but seeing the prices of these types of guns continuing to lower over the years is starting to make me very interested on how the consumer market responds. But until then, I'm gonna stay focused on training with what I know. If you wanna see a video about the gun that I carry and compete with on a weekly basis, go ahead and click this video right here. I go into detail on why I chose this gun and how it holds up compared to other guns that I've shot. I really hope I was able to spark a discussion about where our industry is headed, and I definitely want to hear your opinions down below so we can all talk about this further. Well, that's all I have for you guys today. As always, I'll catch you guys in the next one.